All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast. Today I have Amanda with me, and I'm pretty excited to see where this conversation goes. I don't know, there's something magical about like the uncertainty and all of the podcast guests that I have on here, which I was saying to Amanda before we hit record. Every single one of them is, well, except for maybe like two, has been like, is it normal to feel nervous? Like, what are we going to talk about? And for you guys listening to this, I don't give scripts to anybody. I don't know if I've mentioned that before. Like, we just show up and I say, oh, we're just going to talk about life and see where the conversation goes. And so, taking a step back, I met Amanda almost 3 years ago, I want to say, online, right? I think I had posted something about, I can't remember if it was like decision fatigue or like time management. And anyways, she ended up joining one of my programs, and we've just kind of been in contact ever since, and much more as of lately, which has been really cool. So, I mean, you can feel free to share about that if you'd like. But let's take a step back and walk through that first time that we met and kind of what has happened to you since then.
Yeah, I think it was about 2.5 years ago is when I first started seeing you on social media. And back then, I was a mom of two. My son was, he would have been about 2, and my daughter was still a baby. And motherhood just was not what I was hoping it would be. I waited my whole life to be a mom, and then it happened. And I was like, why is this so stressful? Why does it suck? And then I started seeing your posts, and you were a mom, and you were just like, looked like you were loving life and still doing your own thing and all that. And I'm like, how is she doing this? Like, how is she enjoying her life and being happy? And so I just started following you and just really connected with all your posts. And then you announced a coaching program, and I'm like, well, I've never talked to this person before ever, but I'm gonna contact her and see what her program's about. And then I messaged you, and you're like, let's schedule a time to talk on the phone. And it was like,
I knew you were going to say.
Oh my God, I hate talking on the phone, and just thinking of talking to a complete stranger was terrifying. And I'm still amazed that I actually got on the phone with you, but I did. And I signed up for your program, and then I signed up for another program, and we just haven't gotten rid of each other since.
You're in it. You're a lifer. You're in it for the long haul. You're coming along,
so.
coming along for the ride.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
And being happy and having kids, because even before I had kids, that was one of the biggest reasons I didn't want kids, is because everyone talked about how terrible it was and how awful it was, and like, oh, you don't know what you're getting yourself into, it's stressful, it's tiresome, it's exhausting, it's this, it's that, and oh, your insides are ripped outside. And I'm like, God, everybody makes birth and child rearing sound like the most awful thing ever. But then at the same time, they're like, oh, but it's so beautiful. I'm like, well, tell me about the beautiful parts then, because literally you've done nothing but scare me. And there is another way. Like, it's all that yin and yang, right? Like, there's not every day's perfect. And I think you know that. I tell you that even like behind the scenes, I'm like, today I want to kill people. Like,
yeah.
Even before we started recording, I was telling Amanda, it's like 9 something in the morning and my kids are still sleeping upstairs. One is in bed with my husband, and the other, I'm assuming, is still in her bed. And I just said, part of me is like, are they dead? Because they never sleep this long. But at the same time, like, I'm too scared to go up there and check, because 1, if they are dead, I don't want to see that. And 2, if they're not dead, I'm probably going to wake them up, and then all hell is going to break loose.
Oh, I've been there.
Oh, shit.
I think that was the hardest part for me. Was I was told how hard motherhood was, so I was kind of expecting the overwhelming part of it. of
Mm-hmm.
like taking care of another person. But yeah, my like biggest goal in life was to be a mom, and then I would be happy all the time, and then I would be fulfilled and joyful. And then like when that didn't happen automatically, I was like, what am I doing wrong? What's wrong with me? You know?
What did motherhood look like to you before you had kids? Like, what did you envision motherhood being?
I guess I just envisioned popping out a couple kids and they would be happy all the time. And I would be happy taking care of them. And I would just feel like I was fulfilling my life's mission, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I think a lot of women can relate to that too.
Yeah. And so when I didn't feel fulfilled and joyful all the time, I just thought there was something wrong with me because, you know, I don't know. I think I was just expecting my kids and motherhood to fulfill me, which is not how it works.
No.
And that's a huge burden to put on tiny children as well.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. What's shifted over the last few years? Because your oldest is
He's 5 now,
5. I'm like, oh
almost
my god.
6. Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy.
And now
So
it's
over the
crazy.
past 6 years, what's shifted from like having, and you don't have to get into like the birth story, but like the feelings of motherhood when you had your first, to feelings of motherhood now that you've had your third.
Yeah. So after I had my oldest, everything just got overwhelming. Like all of a sudden, I had to take care of a baby, which I had like babysat and nannied a lot before. So I thought it would just be like that. But no, it is not like that. It is way more, I don't know, way more overwhelming. And yeah, and I found it super, super hard to do anything for myself, like not just to find the time for myself, but I thought a good mom just took care of her baby 24/7. And so that's what I did. But now, yeah, I had my third baby 4 months ago, and now I know that if I don't take care of myself, then I'm going to be that like overwhelmed monster mom, hating everything and yelling at everybody. And I know that's not how I want to be. So I know that I have to take care of myself first and bring fulfillment and joy to myself first before I can show up for my kids.
So what does that look like for you? Because self-care is different for everyone. So even like what brings you joy and what brings you happiness is different from person to person. So what does that look like for you?
A big thing for me is waking up before my kids do, which I'm still not perfect at it. It doesn't happen every day. But just waking up before they do and having some quiet time to myself is really important. I'm really like, I'm really introverted. I really enjoy spending time with myself. And so if I don't, um, the day just doesn't go as well. So that's been a huge help. And right after my third was born, I was like speaking to myself in my head, like people do. And I'm like, what is one thing I can do every day for myself? Like just a small thing that I can do that I really love to do, and like make a commitment to doing that every day. And so I decided that, you know, I love reading. I can do it pretty much anytime, anywhere. I can do it when my kids are running around being crazy. And so that's just one small commitment that I made to myself after my third was born. And that has helped a lot. Like just knowing that I'm making that time for myself and doing something that I enjoy.
Yeah. I think it's important to note that, you know, like reading is what brings you joy. And the next person, it may be meditation, it may be gardening, it may be running, it could be anything. I know a lot of people get hung up in the comparison game. You know, they see people online or social media or in their immediate life that are like, oh, I'm doing this thing over here. You should do that too. And I think a lot of times we try to mimic what other people are doing, thinking that it will bring us joy. When really it's an inward journey, but you can find the inspiration on the outside. So have you experienced any, I'm going to call it comparisonitis, or even like perfectionism, like if it doesn't look the right way?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, there are so many people on social media that I would compare myself to. And I'd be like, oh, she's doing that, I should do that too. And I would do that thing. And I'm like, why isn't it making me as happy as it's making her, you know? And so I've definitely fallen into those comparison traps. And yeah, it's definitely the biggest lesson I think that I've learned is to just be more introspective and be more curious about myself and what makes me happy, and not comparing it to what makes others happy, or, you know, all the stuff you see out there. So definitely just listening to myself more, spending more quiet time with myself, and figuring out what works for me specifically.
Yeah.
For sure.
And nobody else is going to have those answers either. And that's where the like meditation or like sitting with yourself and just asking questions, or like journaling, like, what do I like? What do I want? And it's okay to try things, but then listen to that. If all of a sudden it's like, ugh, this isn't making me happy. I think I'm just doing this because the next person is doing this. Well, then stop doing it to please other people.
Yeah. I think that was a hard lesson for me. I resisted it, all the introspection, and you probably would agree with that I resisted doing that for a long time. I'm like, I just want to do what somebody else tells me to do. You know?
But that's the easy way. Like, it's easy for somebody to say, like, tell me what to do. And I do it too. I know on a deeper level what I should do next majority of the time. But sometimes it's easy just to look at somebody else and say, tell me what I need to do. Tell me what I need to do. Because then we can't point the finger at ourselves when it doesn't go right. We point the finger at the other person. Well, that person told me to do this. And so it's kind of like a defense mechanism that we've created, because our brains, our minds are miraculous, and they will find ways to keep us safe and make things easy. And we will do anything and everything to avoid the hard work, the inner work, the work that our sole purpose is, you know, the reason we've been put here on this earth, this planet. And we just resist, because I think we're scared of who we truly are and how powerful we can really be at our core.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So I don't know why this just came to me, but I remember you talking about wanting to do yoga teacher training years ago, back when you were in college. And you had recently, I believe, just completed that. And I don't know where you want to go with this, but like yoga just popped into my brain because I think you still practice yoga. Yes.
Yep.
So can you walk us through kind of that journey for you? I don't think I've talked to anybody on this podcast about yoga, and maybe you can share some insight on that journey, or why you started, why you quit, why you started back up, and what that process was like.
Yeah. I first started doing yoga in college. The college I went to, they offered like free classes at the wellness center. And so my friends and I would go do yoga just every once in a while, not regularly at all. And then after I graduated college, I moved to a city all by myself. I didn't know anybody there. And so it was like a super lonely time in my life. And I was also dealing with some like depression, anxiety, that was really flaring up at that time. And so about a mile away from my apartment was this yoga studio. And I started going there after work a few times a week. And it was like the one place at that time where I didn't feel like alone. And so that was a huge deal then. And so I would go there and, even though I wouldn't really talk to anybody else, I was still in a room full of people. So I didn't feel alone. It was a little comforting. And I just really enjoyed doing it. And so I just kept going and going. And then I moved back to my hometown and I found a studio in Sioux City. And I really enjoyed going there. And I decided to sign up for teacher training down in Omaha. And I think I was just not in a great place in my life yet. I was still really dealing with depression and anxiety, and I just couldn't fully commit to the teacher training program that I had signed up for. And I don't know. Yeah. I also think that I was relying on yoga to fix how I felt inside, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And so I was expecting it to fix me. It wasn't fixing me. And I don't know. I just couldn't fully commit to the program in where my life was at the moment. So a few months into it, I quit that teacher training program and wasted a lot of money because I had paid for it in full, and yeah, anyway. And then got married, started having kids. I was not practicing it at all. And I did miss it. And so January of last year, on New Year's Day, there was a class being offered by a teacher that I used to go to in Sioux City. And I'm like, man, I'm just going to go to it. And I went, and it was the first time I had been to a studio in years. And it was just like all the magic came back. I just love the environment of a yoga studio. And I really loved that teacher. And so I told myself, I just made kind of a resolution, if you will, that I would go to a yoga class twice a month. And February rolled around and that teacher announced that she was running a teacher training program. And I'm like, oh man, I really, really wanted to do it, but I was really, really scared to do it because I didn't want it to turn out like last time. I didn't want to start a program and then not finish it. And yeah, but I don't know. I just kept thinking about it and kept seeing her posts about it. And then it started in April, and in March, I brought it up to my husband, and he was like, well, I don't want you to start it and then quit like you did last time, and then we would just be out the money. So I don't know if it's a great idea. And I'm like, I know, but I just really want to do it, but I don't know. But then the next day I talked to that yoga teacher and I signed up. I put down the deposit, just like on a whim. And then I was like, shit, I got to tell my husband I did that. Because, it starts in a month. He's going to find out that I signed up for it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. I was so scared to tell him about it. And I don't know. I think overall, I like to project my fears onto others, if that makes sense. And so I don't know. I think I was wanting him to tell me that I couldn't do it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that's just, it goes back to the pointing the finger thing, because if somebody tells us we can't, it's actually one of the most, not to get all like businessy, but that's like one of the biggest objections that people have is, oh, I have to ask my husband, or my husband won't let me, or my
Huh.
spouse won't let me. And it's, if you Byron Katie that and turn it back on yourself, it's, you won't let yourself. You don't trust
Yeah.
yourself, because if you really, really thought at your core that it was something that was going to help you and your family or fulfill something, if
Mm-hmm.
your spouse is supportive, and this is not like a, oh, he's supportive in some areas but not others. If
Mm-hmm.
your spouse is truly supportive, they will understand. They may be upset that you didn't say something in the beginning, but just think of the roles reversed. If something meant that much to your husband and he was just like, honey, I had to do it, like it's going to help us, you
Mm-hmm.
would be like, okay, I trust you, you know?
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. I think I was putting that mental pressure on him to tell me no because I
Mm-hmm.
was scared to do it. But yeah, anyway, I signed up, and even though I had been doing personal development for a couple years by then, like this is when like the introspective piece really clicked for me. Like going through that program, I learned so much more about myself and how to listen to myself, and like how to just find out what makes me happy. Um, which I know a yoga teacher training program, you're learning how to teach yoga, but you're also learning just so much about yourself. And so I think it was really through that program that I learned how important it was not to just do what all these personal development leaders were telling me to do, but just to like slow down and listen to myself and use yoga as a tool to do that. And so for
Yeah.
the first time, I was not expecting yoga to come in and heal me. I was realizing that I was showing up there to heal myself and to hear myself. Yeah.
I love that.
And that
I've heard,
program was amazing.
I've heard, oh, I thought I lost you there for a second.
Nope, you're here.
Okay, I don't know what just happened. Anyways, my phone like went blank. I've heard that even if you don't want to teach yoga, that going through a yoga teacher training is super beneficial, because yoga is a lifestyle. It's a practice. It's much more than just a movement. It's an embodiment. It's a mind, body, spirit I want to say like transition into something else entirely. And I've always been really called to do yoga teacher training.
Mhm.
I actually went to a couple of the info sessions, but I never pulled the trigger because I was always like already in a program, and it's like, how much capacity do I have, you know?
Mhm.
So it's always been something that's fascinated me, and I still practice yoga to this day. And I've read several of like the yoga teacher training books. I just have yet to actually go through like the program, and
Yeah.
it is on my to-do list. It's on my bucket list of things to do. So when you're going through this program, what was some of the moments that stood out to you? Because this is like, it's a month how many months long? 6 months, 8 months?
It was, oh, we got together for 8 weekends. I think it was a total of 5 months. So,
5 months,
yeah,
okay.
but 8 weekends overall. So it's a lot of time.
It's like 200
Yeah.
hours or something, right?
Yep. When all said and done, it's 200 hours. And yeah, I don't know if it's because our instructor is also a mental health therapist, but I just felt like it was so introspective that I just learned so much about myself that, I thought I had figured out so much about myself up to that point, but then it was just like uncovering a whole new layer that I had been ignoring for a while. But the first moment that I remember being like really affected by what we were learning was we had to embody and teach one of the 5 elements, like air, space, earth, water, fire.
Mm.
And the instructor was going around the room saying, okay, like, you're going to have water, you're going to have fire, And I was like the last one that she was going to give an element to. And I'm like, God damn it, she's going to give me fire. I just know it.
It's so
Because,
funny. I was just thinking that. I'm like, Amanda
yeah,
got fire. She got fire.
yeah. If you know me, I'm pretty quiet. I'm pretty,
You're a
I'm not the
water
life of the
naturally because you're
party,
calming.
I guess. Yeah, I'm like an earthy water, be quiet, stick to myself type of person. And so I'm like, God, she is going to give me fire and I'm going to be pissed. And sure enough, she gave me fire. And so I'm like, how the hell do I embody this and teach it? And so in my Amanda way, I taught, this is like weird stuff. I don't know. I
No,
taught,
I love it. Keep going.
yeah, I taught as a campfire. So a relaxing campfire that people are chilling around. And, I kept it in my very Amanda way. And after I did it, she's like, what if we tried this instead? And she led us through this powerful, like, making noise, making big, grand, fiery movements. And like, after she did that, I said, you gave me fire on purpose, didn't you? And she's like, yep, I did. I was like, damn it. And then after that, we did a little meditation and I just like started crying and I could not stop. And it was just like me realizing that I need more fire in my life. Like I needed to find that in myself and bring it out more because I just have always been too scared to do that before. And so that was like the first big aha moment that I had at teacher training. And yeah, something I will never forget. It just like really, really touched me, I guess.
It's so interesting how the kids are awake, by the way, so they're not dead.
Good.
But it's so interesting how those big moments, they stick with you and they're like pivotal points in your life. And at that moment, you there's no going backwards. Like you can never unsee what you felt. You can never unsee what you experienced. And it's like you look at life through a new lens when you have those moments. And this is the beauty, this is the magic of somebody guiding you through that process. Guiding you through the process of going inward, going deeper. Sometimes we're very lost on our own journey, and it's like the universe or God gives us these guides and places them along our path every time we're either stuck or we're at a fork in the road. And it's like, which direction do I go? How do I navigate this? And then boom, somebody will show up in your life and say, this is the way, let me show you. Now they don't do it for you, but they create the space. They create that sacred space for you to heal yourself.
Yeah. And I think those moments are so beautiful because that's when I think, oh, this is when my journey starts. Like when I first signed up with you, I was like, this is where my journey starts now. And, but there's never like one final journey, like every time a moment like that happens, it's just like a whole new layer of your journey. And so it just shows you that it never ends.
but that's the beauty of it, right? We have these valleys and these peaks, and we have these places that are, our deep dark forests, and then there's the big sunny prairies, and there's times where it's spring and everything's blooming, and then there's times where it's dark and we hibernate, and
Yeah.
it's going with what like Mother Nature and the universe has intended for us, and it only ends at our final resting place. But even then, I like to believe that your soul lives on. And in what
Mm-hmm.
capacity, I don't really know, but I like to believe in things and in past lives. And, every time that you're put on this planet, you're put here to learn lessons. And when you shove things down and avoid doing the inner work, you're not doing what you were called to do, what lessons you were called to learn, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it is. It's a beautiful thing for sure.
So what's next for you? What else have you, after like yoga teacher training, you go through that? Are you still, I guess I don't even know if you're still practicing that or if you're still doing that or or was that just a part of your journey?
Um, the teacher training finished last September, but I still had some hours to finish up, and I had my baby in December, so it got delayed a little bit. And that was also interesting, being pregnant during teacher training, because
Oh, the emotions.
yeah, you're like extra emotional, and I feel like you're extra introspective when you're pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And so that just I thought it made it even better. It was pretty cool. But then I did finish up those hours in February, and I was gearing up to start teaching. And now I'm kind of glad I didn't, because it's a little hard to do that in person right now with all this
Yeah.
going on. But in the future, I would definitely consider teaching. Like, I think it would be a fun side job. I don't think I could do it full time, because I just don't want to take the magic of it away from myself,
Yeah.
I don't want to make it a quote unquote job, but I would definitely love to share what I learned someday.
I love that.
Yeah.
So what other big ahas did you have, or I guess before we kind of transition into kind of what you're doing now, and we can even talk
Mhm.
a little bit about like how COVID has impacted you at all, if
Yeah.
it did or not at all, because I know we've talked about this a little bit, and we probably have a little bit different perspective than others.
Mhm.
um, but is there anything else that you'd like to share about yoga or yoga teacher training?
Yeah, I guess my biggest realization of all was that I have a natural gift of like a relaxing presence. Um,
Mhm.
I've heard that like multiple times from multiple people, and I would always think like, what the fuck are they talking about? Like, I'm just like bottled up anxiety in a body, you know? And so like I just never accepted that, but going through teacher training and learning more about yourself and getting feedback from the group that I was with, which I had an amazing group. And so, like, I trusted what they were telling me, and I trusted what my instructor was telling me, and I trusted what I was feeling about myself. And I was like, yeah, I do have a calming presence. And so now I realize it and I own it. And that was probably the biggest realization of all, is that not everybody has to be the loud, fiery life of the party, that it's also a gift to be a calming and relaxing person. But I can also have that fire there if I need it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I've always thought of you as like calming and relaxing. And I know we've had this conversation before, but
Yeah.
it's so interesting that we are the last to see what others see, and we resist it. And I do it too. I mean, there's a lot of things that I think people just know in general where they're like, oh, I'm not that, but they're like, okay, maybe I am a little bit, or I don't know how they see that. So I thank you for sharing that, because I think a lot of people can relate, especially when that aha moment goes off where you're like, oh my gosh, they're right. Everybody's been telling me for so long. It makes sense now.
Mm-hmm.
So what have you been doing since then? How's life with baby number 3?
Life has been good. He's been a super chill baby who I think he just knows that his big brother and sister are super energetic. And so he's like, I'm just going to be chill.
He's like you.
He's very laid back. He's been awesome. And my oldest 2 are like obsessed with him. So that's really fun to watch. And so, yeah, things with that have been good. And yeah, work has been good. Got some new work going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's your take on all this COVID stuff? I know the other day we were kind of talking about abundance versus lack mindset. And I think listeners know kind of my take and my perspective on that, but can you talk about that for a little bit?
Well, it's definitely like a mix of positive and negatives for me. Like I've been working from home, which I don't super enjoy. I'd much rather go to an office and be with other grown-ups, and so that's been a transition for sure, but luckily I still talk to you regularly. And yeah, so just working from home has been a little frustrating, just like figuring out the schedule, figuring out how to work when my kids are around. So yeah, that part's been a little tricky. And also just, I don't know, I just like overall just have this caged in feeling, And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. And like, luckily we live in an area where we have a yard that we can go outside and play. We can go out on walks. We can still get out of the house, but it's just like, I don't know. It's just like a weird caged in feeling that I'm sure I'm not alone in.
It reminds me of like island fever, or cabin fever. When you're confined to a space for a certain amount of time, it feels like a part of your freedom has been taken away. And you're like, oh, I got to get out of here. I don't know where I'm going to go, but I got to do something.
Yeah. So especially the past week, I've just been feeling that. And I'm like, God, I just like want to go on a date night with my husband, but there's nowhere to go, So it's just like creating a new normal is a process for sure.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I feel like this whole situation is doing such good things for my mindset. Like, it almost makes me feel guilty when I think about it, and especially when I say it out loud, because I know that so many people are out of work and struggling and all of that. But so it does make me feel a little guilty to say this, but like my husband and I are bringing in more money now than we were before. And so like that is doing wonders for my abundance mindset that I've always struggled with, because like just experiencing that, I'm like, even during a hardship, even during when the whole world is in chaos, I can still have this abundance, And it's kind of a weird feeling, but that's been a positive.
It is a strange feeling to navigate. I too deal with that a lot of times. Like I feel very blessed and I feel very grateful, but at the same time, if I look too much to the outside, I feel guilty. And so again, it's that channeling that back inward, and the more we get, the more we can give. And so that's what I have to keep reminding myself of, this, abundance is I also have to tell myself that I deserve it. And that even sounds like icky to say, but I think I've and maybe other listeners can relate, when you deprive yourself of feeling good for so long, it feels icky to feel good. And then we start to self-sabotage ourselves, saying, oh, something bad's going to happen to me. Something bad's going to happen to me. It's only a matter of time before my luck runs out. Or we start to say, stupid shit like that, versus just allowing ourselves to feel good and knowing that we as humans deserve to feel good. You deserve to feel good. I deserve to feel good. And nobody should be deprived of that basic human right. And so it comes down to, when you start to feel gratitude and feel blessed and receive and accept this abundance, you will get more of it. And the more you get, the more you can give. And it's giving from a place of love versus giving from a place of lack. So for example, I have more, so I feel blessed to be able to give more, versus if I don't have enough, I feel angry if I have to give from an empty cup. And this kind of even goes back to like self-care. The more you pour into yourself, the more you're able to pour into others. But if you're running on E all the time, emotionally, physically, financially, you're going to find that you're stressed, you're anxious, you're overwhelmed, you're broke, and the stories that you tell yourself will remain the same.
Yeah. And yeah, it just felt so strange at first that I was like happy about certain things that were going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then I didn't really know how to like put it into words how I was feeling. And then you made a post, probably a couple weeks ago, about how you felt guilty for being happy.
Mm-hmm.
And just what you wrote in that post, I was like, yeah, like that's what I'm feeling. And yeah, it's not just about like more money, but we have more time, I
Yes.
have more time at home to do more of the things that I love. And like, we've had the time to start a garden this year, and just having the kids at home more has been good. And yeah, it just seems like more of the good stuff has been coming in. And yeah, I just didn't know how to deal with that at first without feeling just so guilty. But
Yeah.
you
And I
just have
think,
to embrace it.
yeah. Yeah. For me, I feel like society, culture, things like that, they make me feel like I should feel bad. I know that there's chaos in the world. I know there's a pandemic going on, and I'm trying to do my best to do my part, but at the same time, I don't have to get caught into the fear, because
Yeah.
ultimately the most contagious thing is fear. And so I feel that if I remain at a high vibration, I'm inspiring others to remain at a high vibration. So for example, if I would have created a similar post saying, oh, I feel so guilty, I feel so bad, like all the chaos in the world, everybody's dying, all this, all that, what feelings would you have felt based on that, versus saying like, hey, I'm choosing to feel joy and abundance and look at the blessings around me. And we complain about not enough time. And magically the universe has gifted us all this time.
Yeah.
Let's use it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm really sensitive to other people's emotions and energies. And so there are plenty of like posts on social media that are like, oh my God, it's doomsday. Oh my God, this is terrible. This sucks. That sucks. And if I look at that stuff for too long, then I get caught up in it so easily.
Absolutely.
So I really have to limit what I'm looking at or how much news I read, and just focus on what my situation is, how I'm feeling, which I don't know, maybe that sounds self-centered, but I think that's just what you have to do to be grateful for what you have and to keep yourself in that more high vibrational state for yourself and for your family.
Yeah, exactly. And when other people start to see that, they will feel that too,
Mm-hmm.
It's like giving the next person permission. He just like came down here, coughed all over it. He's got the Rona. Just kidding. I'm totally kidding. But when you start to embody that abundance and that gratitude, that joy, and saying like, yes, even though there's chaos, I'm choosing happiness. It's like you're giving permission to the next person, saying like, it's okay to feel happy. Like it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel happy. And you can feel both simultaneously. I don't think that we should put ourselves in all of our emotions in one basket or all of our feelings in one place, because you can feel sad and happy. Like you can feel sad for the people who are experiencing loss, but you can also feel happy that you've been gifted time and that, maybe your immediate situation hasn't been impacted. So you are blessed, and it's an opportunity for you to count those blessings and to give more gratitude to those things.
Yeah, it's overall been a really good lesson in abundance that I definitely needed.
Love that. So before we start to wrap this up, I know you've been working on a project, and I do want you to share with our listeners what that looks like and how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, so I've started a new project called All Moms Have a Story. And my initial thought was to do, I don't know if you remember Post Secret or like Humans of New York, that type of thing. And I'm like, I could have moms write stories and I could feature them on my Instagram. And so that was my initial thought. And then I started writing out some of my own stories, and man, they would have filled like 10 posts. It would have been way too long. And then I actually had a Reiki session with this Reiki healer. And I don't know if people know what that is, but
I think about half of our listeners will know, and the other half are going to go Google it right now.
And the big message that she channeled through for me was that I needed to start using my voice more often. And like I said before, I'm a quiet person. Using my voice literally kind of freaks me out. But I'm like, man, like I could start a podcast for this. And it would just be a lot easier to tell stories there. And I think I told you, I also had a dream that I was talking to you. Like, this is just like crazy, but I had a dream that I was talking to you about it, and you were like, no, social media, it's just not the way to go. Everyone needs a podcast. And I was like, man, I have a Reiki healer telling me to use my voice. I have Dream Sasha telling me
Dream Sasha
to do a podcast. And I'm like, I'm just going to do it. And, a few months ago, I had no idea how a podcast worked. But now I've had some training in how to edit a podcast, upload it, and I'm like, it's really not that hard. Like, I can figure this out. And, after some technical difficulties, I got it started, and I have a few episodes out now. I've shared one of my own stories so far, and then just today I published my first guest story. So that is super exciting. So,
ooh, I'm going to have to listen to that one.
Oh, it's a good one. So yeah, my plan is to just share more of my own stories on there, and to share stories from other moms too.
I love that. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I just feel like there's not enough positive mom stories out there. Like, not just positive ones, but just like real stories.
Yeah.
You go on social media and you see someone's highlight reel, or you see somebody bitching about how all they want to do is kill their husband or their kids, or,
Oh, don't even get me started on that. I had to remove myself from like 99% of the mom groups that are in our area, because I felt like it was just dad and husband shaming. Like I would literally I would read these posts to my husband, and I'm like, I cannot believe these women. Like,
and yeah, it's just so hard to find the in between, the people who want to share their real stories of the good and the bad, And so that is just my biggest goal, is to have moms share their stories and just hear each other's stories and to feel more connected because we're all more alike than we may think.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I just want moms to feel that connection and just be like, I'm not alone in this because, yeah, motherhood can be very isolating in
Mm-hmm.
this day and age. And so just feeling that connection to other moms is really my biggest goal for this project.
I love that. One of the things that I love about real stories is I always learn things about people. I really love learning from experience and by people's storytelling. Like nothing, I'm not that person that's like, give me 3 steps to motherhood. I'm like, tell me how you did it. And then I like take the
Yeah.
pieces of what I think would work for me. And then I use
Mhm.
them. And then I say, oh yeah, so-and-so taught me, because I feel like it's a lost art learning from one another. We're so
Mhm.
independent, or we're so dependent on Google, like, hey Google, how do I do this? Or hey Google, how do I do that? And we lose the experience in learning from one another and learning from other people's
Mhm.
mistakes.
Yeah, I've definitely read a lot of parenting books in my day. And, it's nice to learn stuff from experts, but just like
But
when you
like, what
talk,
makes them an expert? Like, that's what gets me.
yeah,
Like, there's some books out there that are written by people who don't even have kids. And I'm like, how
I
are you an
know.
expert? That doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense to me. How can you be a parenting expert when you're not a parent?
Yeah. Like just talking to another parent who's in the same stage of life that you are
Mm-hmm.
and like hearing stories from them and being like, oh my God, I feel that too, or that happened to me too. Like that is so much more beneficial to me than just reading the professional books.
Yeah. And I know that there's even like coaches and other people out there who, maybe you hire a baseball coach and they're not a professional baseball player. Like, I get that, but I don't
Mhm.
know if I would hire somebody who hasn't, like, I really, really value the personal experience
Yeah.
versus just the education and somebody pointing and saying, and maybe this is just how I was brought up, because I feel like my whole life I was told, do as I say, not as I do. And so
Yeah.
maybe that's like the little rebel in me where I'm like, no, no, no. Tell me how exactly you did it. I want a step by step on your experience, not
Mhm.
what you think I should do.
Yeah.
So how do
Okay.
people find you on that?
I'm on Instagram. My page there is at All Moms Have a Story. And the podcast is also called All Moms Have a Story. It's on iTunes. So you can go listen to it there. You can follow me on Instagram to get updates on when new episodes come out. And I'm always looking for new moms to come onto the podcast and tell their stories. So you can always send me a DM over on Instagram, or you can send me an email, allmomshaveastory@gmail.com.
I love that. So before I let you go, what do you want to leave listeners with? What's your biggest takeaway for them?
My biggest takeaway is just to be more curious about yourself and what makes you tick, what makes you happy.
Mm.
Um, I think the biggest gift that we can give ourselves is to just learn about ourselves. I feel like once we reach a certain age, we're like, yep, I got myself figured out. I know everything about myself. But then when you actually sit in quiet by yourself, when you meditate or journal or just sit quietly with your own thoughts, you learn things that really surprise you,
Mm-hmm.
but that makes sense to you. Like you could have a thought about yourself that you never would have expected, but instantly you're like, that makes sense. I'm going to do that for myself. So I just think that the biggest gift anybody can give themselves is just time to figure themselves out.
I love that. I think that just gave a lot of women permission to take a deep look at what's working and what's not working, and be curious. I love that word, curiosity. I think a whole life is just a big experiment, and it's like what works, what doesn't work, and just come at everything with curiosity. There really is no failure. You just find things out about yourself and what you like and what you dislike and what to keep and what to toss.
And as far as we know for sure, this is the only life we get.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe otherwise, but there's no evidence to it, Anyway, but I don't want to be 80 and just not know who I really am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, thank you for taking the time to do this episode with me today. I always think it's so interesting on how these conversations, how they take place, and who knows, maybe at some point in time we can do some of these things in person and have, I don't know, there's something about in-person conversations, but Zoom will just have to do for now. It's second best. We're making it work.
Yep.
So what we'll do is we'll put all of your links in the show notes, and everybody can go follow Amanda at All Moms Have a Story. Submit your stories to her. I know sometimes it can be a little scary at first, but I promise you feel like $1,000,000 after you just share your thoughts. There's something so magical about just like talking with no filter, no expectations, and just letting it flow. You feel magical and so much lighter afterwards, empowered, inspired. I mean, the words just go on and on. So please reach out to Amanda and share your story. I'd love to hear it too.
Awesome. Thank you.